I decided we'll toss in the Django Unchained that we did because we spent so much time talking about Quentin Tarantino. That would have felt bad if we didn't include Django Unchained in there, which may mean I may convince Eddie that we now need to cover the Hateful Eight just to round out that Quentin Tarantino thing. It could all be part of my evil plan to do more Westerns sooner than he wants to do Westerns.
Right. So to clarify, Chris is like, yeah, I'll cut down the Western thing, but I'll just keep adding one more thing and one more thing and one more thing and one more thing, one more thing. So it ends up not to be cut down at all.
Now I need to go find a Western that Peter Falk did so I can make a Columbo joke to come in and go, just one more thing.
One more thing. One more thing.
Boom.
We probably did do a Western, I suspect.
I don't know. I'm going to find it now. So long story short, I wanted to share the Django episode that we did because it's Django Unchained. And I think it would be a good capstone before we really go into our full wrap up of the Westerns.
Yeah. So you'll hear us talking about how next time we're going to do the wrap up. We're not going to do that. We're going to do this now. So it's a bonus episode that no one knew existed. Here you go. Have fun. Enjoy.
Kill white folks and they pay you for it? What's not to like? I'm Chris Spivey.
And I'm Eddie Webb.
And today we're here to talk about Django.
Django, have you always been alone? Django, have you never loved again?
Good morning, afternoon, evening, random time of day, and any other random time spot I could slip into here, patrons. Hope you're all doing well.
Good tea time.
I could do that now that I've actually had high tea at the Savoy, Eddie. I'm a very fancy man. I can talk about tea time.
I had not had tea at Savoy yet, so you're fancier than me, that's for sure.
It was awesome, actually. Like I cannot recommend it enough. Little finger sandwiches. So that's what I want to talk about before we get into the gritty Western.
Finger sandwiches.
Is tea time and finger sandwiches. You're probably asking, why are we talking about Django?
I'm sure
I made a reference when we talked about the Sinners last time, is that the Sinners is almost more of a Southerner. And Quentin Tarantino is trying to coin the phrase Southerner for this general genre that tackles some of the issues about race and everything else in a Western style medium. And so that's why I wanted to touch on Django. So is a retrospect for what Sinners did.
I can see that.
I have a love-hate relationship with this movie before we get started, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, so when you suggested this, I could see kind of the connection between the two. But also, and you can probably see more of this tonight, Ken, this certainly seems like it is an explicit mashup of two 70s film genres of blaxploitation and spaghetti westerns. Whereas Sinners is kind of its own thing that maybe evolves out of this style of movie.
To some extent, because Tarantino, I think everyone knows, loves like that 60s and 70s style thing, be it from like kung fu movies, westerns, blaxploitation, whatever it is. He just like loves it, and that's kind of his creative bed of stuff where he created everything else out of. And
right.
So I'm going to start at the top. My one of my issues with this is Quentin Tarantino, I think everyone knows, is very much a white dude. And he's trying to tell a story about Black people and Black struggle. There's so much that frustrates me about that. And even like if you want, you can go and read all the reviews and everything else about it. A lot of people in the reviews don't necessarily talk about that aspect of it. But Spike Lee was very vocal when the movie came out and everything else. It really got into a lot more detail than what we're going to do here. Because I have all those strong feelings. At the same time, I've talked about movies that need to just create like Black heroes and heroines and everything else going on a journey and having part of their identity be that journey. And this film does that, but it does it to an excess that a Black film developer and creator wouldn't have done.
Right. And for me, I saw that most in the use of the N-word. right? Because when a white director feels like those chains are off, it feels like there's a need to kind of really just use it constantly to an almost implausible amount.
And to glorify the violence and everything else done to black bodies is all something a white director would do. And a lot of that is in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's interesting because like I've seen this movie previously and I quite liked it previously. Since we've been doing these Patreon episodes and going into these different kind of the black cinema, I certainly it jumped out a lot more this time around. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, that's not okay. But I can also certainly see why, like in 2011, a movie like this even being considered as a big box office thing, you know, at that time, maybe only someone like Tarantino could have possibly put something like that out there. I was even conflicted by it. Certainly, I could see why you would be conflicted by it because it's the yes, but also it got made, right?
Yeah, and that's part of it for me because while I have so many issues with it on that level, Quentin Tarantino is a great, brilliant director and writer, and we'll say pervert and freak, but at the end of the day, aren't we all perverts and freaks? And so he had a lot of clout, and he used it to make Django. When Django came out, I think Django, before his next movie came out, was his highest grossing film out of everything he's done, like hands down.
Okay.
It beat Inglourious Basterds, it beat Pulp Fiction, it beat everything else box office wise. It even got God, I forgot his name, Schultz's character, his like Golden Globe and an Oscar for his role in this. I think Inglourious Basterds got him one too, but this got him another one for working with Tarantino.
Wow. Okay.
And Quentin Tarantino, I think, won an Oscar either for the script or something else associated with the movie too. So even more people went out and they loved it. What I don't like is if you go and read reviews and things, they talk about how Tarantino can, I'm using finger quotes and I almost don't want to say it because people won't know it if they like pull it as something from here, finger quotes, from the Black experience. He cannot write from the Black experience.
Right.
But white reviewers and things said he can because they saw the movie and it spoke to them. Some of them, of course, didn't like it because of all the gratuitous violence and everything else. But it is a complicated movie that is excellently done with exceptional acting in it almost across the board completely.
I think it's a fair assessment. It's for me again watching it again. It was certainly a lot of like because the first time I watched it, I was just it's a cool movie. Hey, great. So watching it critically, the whole time it's definitely like the something feels off, and I suspect I know what it is, but it's really hard to point to any specific part of the movie and go, "This is the thing that's off." I mean, and clearly the actual answer is because it's a white director and writer writing for experience that he hasn't lived. But that's not something you can point to in the movie and say, "Here." That's why I settled on the N word because that seems like the most prevalent thing. Tarantino, one of his staples is using profanity and to an exorbitant degree to normalize it as a way of building character. But that is such a loaded word that you can't quite do the same thing with it. And he's trying to do the same thing. A better example of that is Deadwood. Deadwood also uses profanity to a heavy amount to try to normalize the profanity and then give you a sense of character as a result of that. But because the N word is a very specific connotation, you can't apply the same tool for that. So I could see that to me, that was okay. There's an example I can point to, but it's hard. It's hard to because you're right. It's a bit long, and there's a point where maybe it could have been edited a bit. But otherwise, it's really hard to kind of go. This is the problem because it's well acted. It's a good film,
Yeah.
but
it does have two endings, and it didn't need two endings. I agree.
Right. Yes. It's the movie's over. Wait, no, it's not quite over yet. But also, I will say, I didn't walk away from that the same feeling I walked away from Sinners. Sinners was a more, even then, we had concerns and quibbles about it, but Sinners felt like more cohesive movie than Django. But at the same time, like, I think part of it is that Sinners felt like its own thing, whereas this one you could almost see the lines between here's where the spaghetti western stops and here's where the blaxploitation movie starts. It happens several times through it, but you can almost see the seams between the genres. It doesn't really blend, and partially because Sinners is not blaxploitation. Like Sinners is doing its own thing. This is like, no, there are two genres. I can see them all. I see the tropes of both of them. They're very clear. I see what you're doing here, and it's cool that you mix them, but it's also very clear that that's what you've done.
So I guess the other thing I want to point out is we may at some time talk about Westerns on the main podcast. I am not going to delve into the Western genre and break it down for everything else. My only comment about that is that Quentin Tarantino wants to call this a Southerner, but it falls sort of in the Western revisionist genre of movies. And it's like a Western revisionist / action movie with a whole bunch of comedy to mask the darker undertones.
Right.
And if you want us to actually do a Western run sooner than later on the main podcast, where we go into more detail, you can even drop a note here in the comments, and I'll let Eddie know that you said them. But I'll, of course, tell Eddie that you told me that I am the best part of our podcast, and then I'll tell him that.
And I won't believe that, but I appreciate the effort. But that's fair, because I'm using spaghetti western as a shorthand. I don't know the nuances of the actual subgenres of Western. Partially, I'm using spaghetti western because I do know that this is very specifically a reference to an actual Italian movie called Django. So I mean,
I think it was a series of movies.
Oh, maybe I literally, that's all I know about it, is that it previously existed.
Do you know the actor I think one of the actors who played Django is actually in this movie? One of the mini cameos. One of the mini cameos in this movie. All right, so we're gonna jump ahead to tell you the speech. When Django's at a bar in that fight scene that Quentin Tarantino pulled from a movie that people are questioning whether it's historically accurate, at the bar he says, "The D is silent," and the guy next to him says, "I know." That was the actor that played Django.
Oh, okay, nice. Well done. I like that.
And since, all right, I'm gonna transition to the movie itself and less about Tarantino and the problems with it, because that could be an hour in of itself. just that I saw this movie in a back-to-back header on Christmas in 2012 when it came out with Jill. Do you know the other movie that came out Christmas of 2012?
No.
We saw Les Mis and then Django.
Certainly a theme there.
So it's like pre-kid. We were married people, and we had a Christmas, and we said, let's go to the movies, how most people do. And we got to see two back-to-back movies. One of them was amazing, and one of them was had Hugh Jackman in it. I'll let you decide which one I'm talking about.
I thought you were talking about Les Mis and not one of the X-Men movies.
Hugh Jackman was in Les Mis.
I know that. But you said it was a movie you didn't like, so that's why I meant that. Never mind. The joke was funny to me.
And it had Russell Crowe in the other movie too. Russell Crowe as a singer does not necessarily work. I'm just saying. So anyone that's giving Michelle Yeoh shit for Wicked, go back and watch that, and then come back and talk to me about how bad Russell Crowe is.
Right.
I'm throwing a whole bunch of gauntlets today, Eddie. Like, I'm just throwing them at everybody.
Hugh Jackman was great in The Residence, which is a joke that only Chris and I will get.
Oh, he was brilliant. That was the best piece of Hugh Jackman acting I've ever seen. So this movie that I watched back to back with Les Mis on Christmas, I came out of the theater and I liked it. I liked it a lot. I still had all my issues with it then that I have now. I have more now since we're looking at movies more critically than I did back then.
Right.
But I cannot tell you how astonishing it was to be a Black person that liked Westerns to get to see what Quentin Tarantino was trying to do, which is essentially create a Black folk hero in a film.
Yeah.
That was revolutionary, because I didn't necessarily have the context of Buck and the Preacher, what Sidney Poitier did back then, which in itself is a good movie that people, if haven't seen it, you should watch it. But that's also a 70s film style movie, movie made in the 70s versus a film that was made in 2012 that for me then was current day. And we've talked about the different eras of filming, how it's different, and how the beats and things are all different. And Buck and the Preacher, I think, is also inspiration that Quentin Tarantino took to make this film.
I mean, that's one thing that I have a very complicated relationship with Tarantino. Some stuff I like, some stuff I don't like. I have issues with the man as well. But one thing I will give him credit for is that a lot of people look at his stuff and go, "Oh, he's only watched movies from 1970s," and that's just not true.
No.
He loves films. His aesthetic is very grindhouse 1970s B movies, yes, but he's a very omnivorous movie file. So yeah, I completely believe that he's watched older films and also referenced and homaged and drawn inspiration from them. That makes complete sense to me. I have no doubt of it. He loves modern films too. I mean, he loves films. It's just that he has a particular aesthetic that he loves to dig into.
And funnily enough, two of the actors that were in consideration for the part of Django were Michael K. Williams, for all of my Wire fans, and for people that like, what was a gangster show with Steve Buscemi in it? Don't remember it now. Boardwalk Empire. From there, or Will Smith.
Oh God, this movie would have been insufferable with Will Smith.
Because the big thing was, can Will Smith play like a gritty Tarantino character? But we'll never know, because the thing is, from my understanding, is that when Will Smith read the script, he saw that it was a Schultz movie that had a black friend in it. Which, to some extent, the movie is a lot about Schultz.
Right.
Which is another issue I have. But Jamie Foxx, when he came in, was able to work enough with Tarantino that it becomes almost like a buddy cop film throughout it.
Right.
Which is why it works.
Yes. But man, I remember Wild Wild West, and just seeing Will Smith from that movie into this movie, it just my brain is shutting down. I'm not allowed to think about that.
That was someone that just got to have a lot of their ego on screen.
Right.
To the detriment of a movie.
Yes. It's like, why even call it
I think
Wild
if
Wild
we'd
West if you're not
gotten
going to use the property?
Sorry, go ahead.
I would say, why even call it Wild Wild West if you're not even going to use the property? But that's just me.
As someone that liked the old TV series.
Yes.
I think if we'd gotten the more, I don't want to say retrospective, but the more toned down version of Will Smith, I think it would have been a compelling movie to see him be Django. It wouldn't be the same. I don't think it would have like the hard as feel that Jamie Foxx brought to it. But I also think part of that feel that he brought is because he was working so closely with Tarantino, and there was pushback probably from both ends. And I don't know if Will Smith and his ego would have been able to deal with the pushback the same way Jamie Foxx did, because of different star levels is essentially what it boils down to.
Right. At a certain point in your career as the actor, you're hired because you're expected to fulfill a certain style of role. And so if you come in and told, hey, let me tell you how to do the thing you do really well, you get prickly about that. Whereas someone like Jamie Foxx, I've always seen him as an extremely flexible actor. He seems like he has a wide range. And so I have no basis for this. Just my perception is he feels like the kind of guy that's like, cool, what do you need me to do? Okay, trust my ability as an actor to say maybe we should consider this or that, but he's not going to tell the director his movie's wrong. He's going to say, no, I see your core vision now. Let me help amplify that for you. That's a vibe I get from him.
Because there's one or two points I'll bring up specifically that I know where he changed things they want to do in the script that empowered the character. It may not appear to, but it does, from at least my perspective watching it. It goes against that thing of active choice versus passive choice.
Fair. But we bring them up, I guess, get into it more, but like, is it on the same level of like Sidney Poitier slapping somebody, that kind of small change to recontextualize things?
Well, Sidney Poitier getting to slap somebody was like a massive groundbreaking change. It is nothing on that level. Like
not on that level, but insane. I'm purely from a technical standpoint, from a craft standpoint.
To some extent.
Okay.
So when was the first time you saw this movie?
I didn't see it in the theater. but it was pretty soon after. So I think I maybe saw it on DVD. Because I think 2012, streaming wouldn't have been quite a thing yet. I don't think so. Probably would have been DVD.
Did you get your Netflix sent you in the mail?
I think so. Actually, I think it may have been, or maybe I still went to one of the few Blockbusters that were still around at that point.
Blockbuster. Do you know, as a small teen who was into movies and television, I tried to get a job at Blockbuster and I couldn't be hired.
My roommate David actually worked as a manager at Blockbuster, and they have stories. It is apparently a mind-numbing, horrifying experience. So,
oh well, that makes me feel a little bit better about it. Anything else we want to talk about? There's one more point. You mentioned the movie was really long. I think this is one of Tarantino's longest films. If memory serves, Quentin Tarantino, for all of his films, had worked with a specific editor. And that editor, unfortunately, had passed away from like a hiking accident before this film came out. So he worked with someone new. So I think that may have also influenced Tarantino's ability to make the film, to not have someone he trusted enough to make as many cuts to the film.
Right. So not to say I could see him kind of hovering over someone's shoulder, but no, but leave that in. No, leave that in. No, leave that in. Which is, we've talked before about how sometimes directors really should not have as much control over the edit as they would like to. Director's cut sometimes can be great, but sometimes you look at director's cut and it's like, no, actually, it probably should have been edited down.
Yeah. I'm looking at you, Twin Peaks Returns. Anything else you want to talk about from the back end of this movie? Made a bunch of money. People won some Oscars.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a good time for everybody.
Okay. That opening music riff, then Django, red text over a brown background as the camera pans into a line of enslaved black men being marched towards some unknown destination by the Speck brothers. Django is amongst them. He was being sold and separated from his wife, Broomhilda. The Speck brothers are stopped by a loquacious Dr. King Schultz, a German ex-dentist turned bounty hunter who is seeking Django. He's seeking Django about his knowledge of the Brittle brothers, for whom Schultz is carrying a big-ass warrant for. Schultz quickly kills one of the Speck brothers and leaves the other at the mercy of the now freed enslaved people after they threaten him. Since Django can identify the Brittle brothers, Schultz offers Django his freedom in exchange for his help in tracking them down. But before the two ride off together, he does look at the new freely enslaved people and say that the North Star is that way, and you can either A, follow it, or B, shoot and bury those men and go to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, or carry them back to where they were, 37 miles away.
Right. Thinking about this now, when you just talked about how it's a Schultz film with a black sidekick, this definitely frames Schultz like he's the protagonist at the start.
I know that we get an opening shot of Django with him, but he's in a line of people just marching along, waiting to be rescued.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, all that said, I do like Schultz. He is a atypical Western protagonist, which I think is part of it. Although dentists in Westerns is an interesting trend I'm starting to notice as I get back into it a little bit. I guess dentists were very popular in the West.
Come on, Doc Holliday was a dentist.
Right.
Well, a good dentist, but he was a dentist. You do realize back in the Old West, Eddie, that you didn't need certificates to do anything. As a white person, could go and put up a sign that says like doctor, dentist, blacksmith, anywhere they wanted. People would likely believe them until their services didn't work after a couple times.
I mean, that's fair. He mentions that he was actually a dentist previously, but never actually says where he gets his degree from. So
somewhere in Germany. All right.
Yes.
So do you know why Schultz is a dentist in this?
Actually,
The
no, I
real
don't.
reason.
No, I don't.
So originally, the actor whose name I can't believe I forgot, I knew it yesterday, because he's Blofeld in the Bond movies, was practicing horse riding and fell and broke his pelvis. So there was talks about possibly recasting him, but instead they were like, "What if we put him on like a wagon? Then he doesn't have to mount the horse and everything else." And then they came up with the idea to have it be a big dentist thing because it's a great visual gag to it. It bounces
Right.
around. I think I think in this ed they had to do they replaced that tooth 20 times because it kept hitting trees and everything else. But it was like beautiful. And so it was so they could keep Christoph Waltz. Oh, there we go. Getting old. Christoph Waltz in the role because he's amazing. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And it then became part of the gag. That's also placed from the store's money and everything else. And that's why he's always in the cart instead of both
Mhm.
being on horseback, which you would usually have to be on horseback to be in a Western.
And I mean, obviously, it sounds like it was a change made out of expediency, but in retrospect, I like it because, again, it helps to reinforce that he's not a typical Western protagonist, which, take it from the film as a whole, is good because Django does grow into that role. So having Schultz never have been in that role gives Django room to embody that archetype. So in retrospect, it's
Yeah.
really good. But at this moment of the movie, it does feel a bit like, oh, so Django's not really the hero?
Which another part about it, because you keep saying he's not a typical protagonist for a Western, is I think part of that was intentional on Tarantino's part because by bringing in someone like from a different country, that allows the viewers to have what would be like a 2010, 2012 point of view of different people and groups. Because that's why Schultz is
Right.
a very much a white ally for the film,
Right. But because
which
he's not
avoids
American,
him
it's
being
justifiable.
avoids him being a northerner, which could have potentially upset a whole bunch of people in the South. He's not a southerner, which could have offended everybody.
Hmm. No, I just say that as a smart move. I could see that.
And funnily enough, Schultz does uh Schultz pays for Django's freedom and the horse, but then forges his own bill of sale. It's a nice little touch
Hmm.
that he actually pays the money he's supposed to before all the free people kill that guy. So I would assume that he's giving them money to go about their jobs, to go about their lives.
Yeah, it's funny. As I was watching it, I was like, oh, that's lawful neutral. Okay.
Oh god. Oh, so do you recognize the brothers here? Do you know that one of these actors is going to show up again in the movie in a different role?
No, I didn't know that.
All right, I'm not gonna say anything then. We'll have to wait and see if you can spot him out. When we're talking about people.
I won't. Just spoiler. I'm bad at this.
So I'm trying to remember now because it's been a while since I watched the movie because I've actually had to do a lot of work. James Remar is one of the Biddle brothers.
Okay.
Warriors. Ching, 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 ching.
Oh,
And
okay. All right.
he then is also the main security guard in Candyland.
I don't think I've seen Candyland.
No, so Candyland is Leo
Oh,
DiCaprio's estate in the
sorry,
movie.
sorry. In the movie,
He's a
right, right.
security
I thought
guard
the
in
movie
the
Candyland.
bowler
I've never
hat.
seen a movie. No, okay. Now that you say that, now, okay, yeah, I can see why.
Yeah. So small little like bit there of that just pretty funny.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
now that you say that, that is probably another reference to the spaghetti western genre because like there's lots of those bit parts that were just played by the same actor in the same movie, or at least in the same series, right?
yeah.
So it's probably a nod to that. I wasn't surprised.
Anything else about this piece before we move on?
Um, the violence is very Hammer horror in the sense that it's over the top, but also like very clearly special effects. Not in a
Yeah.
bad way. It's not in a oh, that's done badly, so I see special effect way. It's the there's no way human beings explode like that kind of way.
And I also think that was a brilliant move because then this movie is excessively violent, but that ridiculousness of the deaths undercuts it. So it's like
Yeah.
humor, horror. Oh,
It's almost cartoon violence, right? It's so over the top and excessive, It's not silly, but it's close. So you're right, yeah, so it allows the room to be hyper violent without being like a splatterpunk or a horror film.
I wonder if that was also potentially. I don't think this movie had an R rating. I don't know. Maybe it had an R rating for language. It's been so long since I looked at ratings.
Probably.
Well, I think it probably was R just for the constant use of language. So when you made a point about Deadwood earlier using profanity, Deadwood used profanity a lot and to punctuate things, but the profanity that Deadwood used primarily were not racial slurs. This
Agreed, yeah.
movie uses racial slurs and profanities.
And to be blunt, racial slurs almost exclusively. Like, it does use other profanity, but it's so rare compared to racial slurs. Whereas you're right with Deadwood, I think that there is the occasional slur in Deadwood, but again, it's very pointed, intentional moments.
Yeah.
But cocksucker, motherfucker, those are the ones that just tend to get thrown around a lot, and you get to become used to them.
And I think one of the reviews that I read back in the day talked about how Quentin Tarantino used racial slurs somewhat in Inglourious Bastards, but not nearly to the same extent that he used the N word in this movie, because people would have not let Inglourious Bastards be made if he'd done that to excess. It was one of the reviewers talked about how the level of it, and to some extent the disrespect for black people from Hollywood wide, that he could do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very fair.
The pair riot into town. Another N-word drop. Then another. Then another. Damn. Schultz walks into a saloon and orders beer for both of them, only to have the bartender run out of the bar to call the sheriff. And he specifically says, call the sheriff, not the marshal. Schultz serves them both beers as we get some of his backstory. The pair come to an arrangement before the sheriff arrives, who Schultz kills as he has a warrant for him, much to the marshal's chagrin, because the marshal's just a good old boy, never done you no harm. I loved it. I loved it. I love the entire scene of him getting to shoot the sheriff, instantly raising, and then him telling Django, be very careful, go out with your hands up, because these people will be very agitated. And as the pair leave town, we get some of Django's backstory. And Schultz stresses that you can never break character during any of their missions.
Right. And so one thing we're establishing pretty quick is that Schultz is more or less teaching Django that as long as you follow the letter of the law, it is okay to kill white people. And the movie takes very clear pains to the violence of this chunk is percentage wise much smaller than the legal debate section of this movie, right? Like, he just straight up shoots the marshal, and then after that,
The sheriff.
it's tense. Oh, sorry, just sheriff.
Specifically the sheriff.
That's fair. It's very important. And there's a lot of tension about getting all the guns and surrounding the place and whatnot. But like, Schultz spends several minutes explaining his legal position, which is again, when I first saw it, I was like, this is wild. I love it because this is the exact kind of thing that happened, but it was wild to me.
The essentially finger quotes frontier justice back in the day, because that's one of the things that I love about writing in the West, and we even bring up in Haunted West, is that you can be a villain in multiple towns and then go 2 towns over and then become the sheriff, or even sometimes the sheriff. Like, God, what was it? I think the Earp brothers were also like law enforcement, but they also worked at the casino and they would cheat people in the casino. So there's that constant duality of purpose in who you are. There were no specifically like a very crass terminology for it, but there were no very specific white hats and black hats. There was just ambiguity across the board.
Right. One thing I noticed on this watch is in the first scene you mentioned that he forges a bill of sale. I noticed this time around that the exact same judge signs all of his warrants. And like the movie never explains it, but it kind of implies that all the warrants might also be forged.
I don't think so, because that was a thing that really happened like back then. For instance, this is more of a Marshall thing, but like Bass Reeves and like, God, was it Roy Bean? It's been so long since I've been in Haunted West now. Was like the judge that would send Reeves and the other marshals out to do stuff, and he was the judge that signed all the warrants.
Oh, okay.
And if these are warrants that the sheriff knows about already, because someone has to literally wire them the money to some extent, or he can get communication for them, the warrants have to be real, and people would put up warrants for people all over the place.
Okay.
I'm not saying that he may not have forged a couple of them, but most of them would have to be authentic to really get the pay, or else then there'd be warrants for Schultz out everywhere.
Fair. But still, it's a neat touch. It shows that there's stuff that happened before this movie started, which I always love when they do it well.
How did you like QT saying that Brunhilde and Django are Shaft's ancestors? Hush, shut your mouth, Shaft.
I had no idea.
Brunhilde von Shaft, because I'm assuming maybe Django took her last name, or maybe that was already Django's last name, and Schultz just calls him Freeman. We don't know because Django never says what his last name is. But von Shaft.
Does Shaft speak German?
Well, would you speak the language that your great grandparents spoke? Maybe.
Maybe not. Fair enough. I don't like it. I'll be honest.
Nope, not one bit.
Because it feels like it's saying, cool, all black heroes ultimately stem from one bloodline, which reduces everybody as a result.
Yep. Don't like it. Same reason I don't like a lot of stuff that Star Wars did by truncating everything down to like the Skywalker bloodline.
Yep, same.
You're making your universe and worlds too small.
Yep. Walt Newton has a lot to answer for.
And something I didn't really put in the notes here specifically for us. Nope, never mind. Doesn't happen yet. Actually, it does. Is that when Schultz is also kind of teaching? No, I'm right. It doesn't happen yet. Disregard.
Fair enough.
I'm excited about a scene that's coming up. So that's all.
That's fine. Again, but a little thing like like they go into a little bit like, you know, how Brunhilde got her name, and I think at this point they mentioned that she speaks German.
They do. That's what intrigued. One of the things that intrigued Schultz.
Right. But it's just a neat little touch because for the movie's flaws that we've already kind of gone into and probably go into again more, it is painting a richer black experience than we usually see in these kinds of films. Right.
Yeah.
So and the fact that it's a detail that is casually thrown out. It's like, of course, if she were owned by people who spoke primarily German, they would have named her German and they would have taught her German. It makes logical sense, but it still implies a much richer experience than we usually see. So I really liked those kinds of details throughout this whole movie.
Yeah, and that would have happened because when we get more of Django's backstory, that would have happened before she and Django met.
Right.
To some extent. Which then questions what Django's real last name is, even though I just made an argument for it. So much like the Western, you can't trust me. I'm shifty.
I mean, I've known that for years.
And I love the fact that Schultz enlists Django's help, that Schultz can't do the mission without Django, but only offers to pay him $75 versus the hundreds of extra dollars that Schultz is going to get. Already inferring Schultz is a greedy person.
Yes. Which again is nice because the first time I watched this, I was at this point getting a tiny bit nervous. So I'm like, is Schultz going to be the perfect white ally? And he's not. You know, it's like, and I think it's a bit later. He mentions like he doesn't like the system, but he uses it. And so it's very much painting a character who is flawed in intriguing ways. So we see more of that until his inevitable conclusion in this movie. So it was nice, right? It's the yes, this guy's going to help Django. This guy's going to be part of his mentorship to make him into a Western hero, but it's not a perfect relationship, and that's interesting.
And it's only because it doesn't cost Schultz anything at all. Like, I have someone here who, in anything, it's already having Django help him more than he's helping Django, other than riding him around. Like, he will teach him things, but It doesn't cost him any real money yet. It doesn't cost him any additional bandwidth, but it gives him like a companion to hang out with. I'm not going to make a larger comment about white allyship, but this is very reflective of a lot of white allyship friendships.
Sure, yeah. It's the I'm happy to be your ally as long as it benefits me. Um, but I mean, the one thing I will say about Schultz, in his very mild defense, is that he's starting from that standpoint, right? He's in no way, shape, or form pretending it's anything else other than a business relationship.
Yeah.
Um, it happens to be an alliance allyship, but the main reason why he freed those slaves was because he needed to get information out of one of them to hunt down a bounty he was looking for. So he's very clearly starting from a business perspective, and because he's German, it's like also I find this reprehensible, but I'm primarily doing it because this is my job, and this is the most expedient way for me to do my job. And so now I have someone who can help me do this. The fact that you're black is secondary to me, but still, I'm having an ally means I can get more people, which means I can clear more bounties, which means I can make more money.
Yep.
So it is not conditional allyship. It is a business relationship that also comes with it a level of allyship. So it's a slightly different approach. And I appreciate that Schultz is pretty clear about that distinction.
And one of the things I do want to point out, and I specifically made a comment even in the description, is that Schultz serves both of them beer. And
Yes.
Schultz has treated pretty much everyone the same. Like that is a big deal for Schultz's character that is constantly displayed throughout the film.
Yeah, he is polite to everyone unless he is there to serve you a notice, which basically means he's going to kill you because it's very clear he also would much prefer dead than alive. But he's the exact same amount of polite to absolutely everyone.
Yeah. Now as a valet in a blue outfit, I said I was going to point out a specific thing that the actor put in. One in the script, it is Schultz telling Django, "You have to wear this."
Okay.
Versus the character now saying, "I have been forced to not be seen. I want to wear the loudest, most audacious thing I can possibly put on." Like little
Right.
changes like that are what Fox did within Tarantino's world. And so when I say it's nowhere near as significant as what Sidney Poitier did, it is not. But it is
Sure.
reinforcing that Django is becoming his own character in the course of this film.
Okay, yeah, but to my point, that's what I was originally asking was like, it sounds like from a craft level, it's the Fox saying, "Hey, if we change this line, here's the repercussions that really help my character." Because really, all it happens, the line changes is, sounds like line changes. Shell's saying, "Wear whatever you want," and as a
So it's
result, he chose that outfit, which again makes a gag later even funnier now. When
yeah.
one of the slaves goes, "Did he force you to wear that?" And no, he chose that. It's actually a joke now as opposed to just another line of dialogue. So yeah, no, I can see why that's not. This is why Jamie Foxx is good, right? Because like if I change this one little bit, look at all these things click into place. That's a good actor.
So there are lots of little things like that he did, but I want to highlight that one in particular because that's huge and it has other little repercussions throughout.
Mhm.
In his blue valet outfit, the pair arrive at a plantation. They bluff their way in with a promise of $5,000. As Django is escorted around the plantation, he gathers info on the Brittles. Once he spots one of them, we get a flashback to what happened to Hildy and Django. And then we get the iconic line, "I like the way you die, boy." And Django
Mhm.
dispatches 2 of the 3 Brittles, and Schultz snipers the last one. We get another example of finger quotes justice. And while they're allowed to leave later that night, the racist plantation owners and the group of not Klan members, because the Klan didn't come into existence until directly after the Civil War, but they're
Right.
very much like the Klan. Under Big Daddy's instructions, amazed by Django's natural talent, Schultz partners with him through the winter. Schultz discovers Django's natural ability with a gun. Schultz explains that being the first person he has ever given freedom to, he feels responsible for Django and is driven to help him in his quest to rescue Brunhilde. And Schultz recounts a German opera to us about a Brunhilde that Quentin Tarantino used for his inspiration for part of this because Christoph Waltz and QT became friends after Inglourious
Mm.
Bastards. Django, now fully trained, collects his first bounty and keeps the handbill as a good luck charm.
Right. I am baffled on how Don Johnson's career has become playing old racists.
Did did you not watch Miami Vice? I think he was a young racist cop at that point in time, right?
To be fair, I don't remember much of Miami Vice to remember that, but it makes sense for the dynamic of Miami Vice. Um, but it's just
I
like,
don't either. So if it's not true, I'm sorry, Miami Vice fans, but it was a good
well, I
joke. I
mean,
had to take.
it's a white cop and a black cop paired together. It makes sense that the white cop's like, you can't work with me, and let's imply heavy racist stuff because it was the '80s. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if that's how the dynamic was originally thing until he comes to respect them, and then they just go fight crime without socks for how many seasons?
I too have watched Alien Nation, the TV series.
Right. But like, we've only watched the Watchmen TV show like about a year ago since last time we talked about a year and a half ago. And I remember him being like, wow, he's really good at this. And then I watch this again. It's like, oh, that is Don Johnson. Oh yeah, he's playing much the same character. And I'm like, I don't know so much Don Johnson that you're really good at this specific role, but that's what you get cast as now, apparently.
Scarily good. So
He was
one of the other
racist in Knives
things,
Out too, wasn't he? Wasn't he racist in Knives Out too?
well, I think they were all racist in Knives Out to
Well,
some extent.
fair,
It was
but
just
that doesn't invalidate my
variations of
point.
racism.
It doesn't invalidate
He
my
was
point.
he was a modern day racist person then, not to the extent of I think Walt's character in that movie, but yeah, he was
Yeah,
more of
fair.
a cheater in that movie than anything else.
Fair enough. Anyway,
Not a good person in the movie.
but yes, I made the joke about the slave making the comment about his outfit, which I again thought it was hysterical. I love it.
It is hysterical and bad to watch when they show up at Big Daddy's plantation to see everyone sing Django on a horse, and then they're trying to figure out how to treat Django throughout their conversations and referencing what you know is an illegal child that likely an enslaver forced himself on a woman to have, telling him to treat him like that kid. Like there is dark implications throughout this whole conversation that is made
Right.
light of and joking that you don't get on a first watch.
And that's, I mean, I'm poking fun at Don Johnson here, but it's one of the things I actually love about his performance is because he's really selling a very funny moment without undercutting the horrible racism of that conversation, right? He's doing a really good job of, hey, no, I'm very keen on you because you're talking a whole lot of money now, so I want to keep that business stuff going. But he never stops the racist pattern, even while being super polite.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's saying horrible things in a very engaging and charming way, which is, again, Don Johnson's really threading the needle on those 2 points, which makes the conversation resonate more strongly. You're right, because on the second watch, there are a lot of dark implications here, but it is a very fun conversation of how does this guy awkwardly try to get this through this moment to get to the money he clearly wants, you know?
And so I'm glad you mentioned that because it made me want to bring up a point. There's a thing called like Southern hospitality. Southern hospitality is a vicious, evil thing. Essentially, they're overwhelming you with politeness and essentially trying to con you into thinking that they're your friends and everything else, while they're being duplicitous and doing an array of other things against you. And it is how this movie is properly portraying it because it's kind of how it works. And it's also one of the reasons that during the Civil War, that general politeness and fake veneer is one of the reasons that a lot of the Confederacy almost, to some extent, had relationships with like Great Britain.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to like stretch out the implications of that and how it operates. And that's part of it here. And that is what we're seeing throughout this movie, which is another reference of why Quentin Tarantino is making it a Southerner.
Right, because all of the villains are Southern, and that is there's a very specific reason for that, because you're right, they're hiding well, the thing that they're not hiding their racism, they're simply giving it different like, use a veneer to it. And that's one of the things that's interesting about this movie is that it's not "Oh, no, pretending to be civil," it's "No, we're still being horrible, but we're putting it through this specific lens." Um, and one of the things that I think helps that is that this conflict between artifice and veneer and sudden violence gives the movie a bit of pacing, because when we get to the point where he finds the brothers, and Django just straight up fucking shoots them, right? He just, oh,
Yeah.
there he is, bam, bam. And then when Schultz comes over, it's like, hey, what's going on? He's like, shot these two people. It's like, oh, cool. There's a third one. Bam. Like Schultz doesn't admonish him. It's the okay, cool. So we're at this stage now.
Well, that conversation's a little different, and I want to point out because it's
Okay.
a beat about both of them. Django says, "I kill both of them," and agree. Schultz goes, "Okay," and is like, "Where's the third one?" It's like, "Third one's over there running." And he asks him, "Are you sure?" And Django says,
Right.
"Yes." And then he asks him again, "Are you sure?" It's like, "I think." And that's when he says, "Well, I guess so." That shows a total disregard for human life and trying to double check his facts, but at the end of the day, figuring it's just safer to trust his new companion. Like that's
No, that's a good point, because what it says about Schultz is that he doesn't care about human life. He cares about the legality.
going back to what we've seen from that character from the very first instance we meet him.
Right. But again, the one thing I like about, so Django very clearly shoots them out of he's hot blooded. It's the, I remember this guy, he tortured me, I'm gonna shoot him. Right. So that's very clear. Schultz, when he comes in, he's very much thinking of this as a job. It's the, okay, we shot those two, cool, down to one, and just with no concern, like, going, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" Thank you for bringing that up, because that reminds me. It's like going, he trusts Django's instinct, you know. And again, he's doing this in front of all of these other people, just completely like, I don't care about the witnesses because I have the law on my side. I just want to get this part done.
But he's doing it in front of a bunch of enslaved people, which then shows
True.
a level of trust that he has for someone that these people are also sort of like recognizing is part of them, but has managed to get into a higher spot. I hate to use terminology like this, but a higher spot
Right.
in like a societal ladder.
Right.
So one of the things that the movie is doing that Quentin Tarantino talked about is having a folk hero, and that going around seeing that is going to inspire other people, hopefully.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Because yeah, here's a white man trusting a black man, and all these black people are seeing it, and it's like, oh, is that a thing that we can do? Right? Is that thing that can is that is
Yeah.
that, that can happen? And then you're right. The white man with the guns show up, and then we have another version of the, I have a warrant in my pocket, signed by this person, which at the time I was watching it, I thought, why are we doing this bit again? We just did this bit. But I realized the difference is that the first time Django is just shocked and just watching Schultz go through this. Django's like, what the hell are you doing? This time he is a participant. And so it's more important to see how Django goes from witness to accomplice. And so, in order to see Django more, you have to have more or less the exact same structure, because that gives more room for Django to change how he's interacting with this thing. Because it's the, oh, exact same pattern, so we can kind of tune it out and pay more attention to Django. And even the camera work. Originally, it was a very wide shot when he shot the sheriff. It was a wide shot on Schultz. He had the paper up, and so it was kind of framing them because you weren't sure what's going to happen. This time around, Schultz is partially or sometimes completely off screen, and we're more focused on Django or the reactions of Big Daddy and his posse. So we don't need to see Schultz as much. So when I watched it again, it's like, oh, okay, now I see why that exact same thing is happening again. It makes more sense now. It's not just stretching the movie out artificially. It is an important bit to have in there.
And coupled with the fact that this time around, it is not a person in law enforcement in a position of power. It is on someone's property who is an enslaver straight up that he is now pulling this trick on. So you have to show that it just doesn't work on like people in the law. It works on nearly everybody, regardless of who you are.
Right.
And this time, though, he has to punctuate that if you don't do it, it's a hanging offense. So that is an extra oomph that he could pull out to show that other people that aren't, if they aren't marshals, will still probably kill them if they could and bury their bodies.
Right.
So, it's good stuff.
It is good stuff.
And okay, the German, I can't remember if it was an opera. I think it was an opera that he recounts is something I
Yeah,
think
Siegfried and Brunhilde, yeah.
yeah, Christoph Waltz was telling Quentin Tarantino about, which is one of the reasons I think Waltz also got the role because they were such good friends. Like that inspired him to make sure that this was his actor. Because originally he had a different actor in mind, I think, for the role, but that actor was a lot older than he thought he was. He never said who it was, but just said the person. I was thinking of them from like 1990, not 2010.
Oh, fair enough. Happens to all of us.
And it's a good scene, but the training montage I love because I saw those mountains. I want to move to those mountains, Eddie. I'm ready to go off and become Western Chris. Just call it a day because they were beautiful. Nowhere else I wanted to go. And the one scene I do want to talk about before we move on, if you don't have anything else, is Django's first real big kill with the sniper rifle. They're sitting there.
Mhm.
There is a kid and his dad, and then Schultz breaks down all the evil things this father has done, and it doesn't matter who they are. We've got a job to do, and he convinces Django to pull the trigger and kill that person in front of their kid, like a big moral discussion they had during that moment. To like give Django nerves of steel, supposedly like Schultz has.
And the one thing I like about that scene is that Schultz isn't mad. It would have been really easy to write that scene of like, give me that gun. Let me tell you how this is done, right? It could have been that way, but no, Schultz is like, okay, let's just take a breath, sit down. He's very carefully talks him through it. It's like, this is what's going on. Let's do a reading lesson. Schultz, at at this point in the movie, we've seen him through a number of situations, and he seems almost inhumanly inflammable. He never gets frustrated. He never gets angry, particularly with Django. And again, the first time I saw it, I was a little concerned because it was like, okay, so we're gonna have the calm white man keeping the savage black man, from doing anything horrible, and that's not how it plays out. It plays out much more like a patient teacher. It's okay, let's just do this. Let me walk you through this. And he lets the other thing I noticed, and this is something I've been paying attention to as I learn about how teaching works and how communication works and mentoring works, is because he makes Django read the handbill and helps him through that, but more or less lets Django read it and then starts just laying out facts in front of Django. He doesn't tell Django how to feel. He just puts it all in front of Django and says, now what do you think? And then Django picks up the gun and shoots the guy. So it's a small moment, but to your point, like it helps to kind of that's the point in the movie where I saw the shift from Django is the protagonist. Schultz is his mentor. He's not the
Yeah.
protagonist because he doesn't tell Django to shoot him. He gives Django the facts. And if Django had said, no, I can't do this, Schultz would have said, okay, cool, taken the gun and shot him. But he
Yep.
doesn't. He's like, you figure it out, and gives Django the choice. So that is something that I really appreciate. It's like, that is how mentorship actually works, or should work, I should say. Is that you give the information, but then let the person you're mentoring make their own decisions.
And this is also the point where, for me watching it, that it cements the fact that they are now friends. It is
Yes.
That is still a mentor like mentee relationship they still have, but it is now friends instead of just business partners.
Yeah. Especially as a German man, it is rare for someone to watch, find their own Siegfried. That's another point where it's like they're not just doing this as business partners now. He is emotionally invested in Django's journey now.
Yeah, and because he wants to become part of Django's story is where it shifts
Yep.
to, going back to your point that Django is now the protagonist. He wants to be part of his mythic tale.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's why I love those scenes, and I love the mountains, and I love like the music playing over it because I got a name. QT does good stuff with music, and as a Western fan, I am like jonesing all over this. I put my quibbles up front so I could just enjoy the movie film as we talked about.
I didn't think of it at the time, but the mention of I Got a Name, I realized it's also probably a bit of a nod to The Man with No Name, the Clint Eastwood trilogy.
Yeah. So, all right, I don't know where he shows up, but Russ Tamblyn and Amber Tamblyn, So Russ Tamblyn was Dr. Jacoby in Twin Peaks, to help
Okay.
you solidify ways, was in a
Okay.
Western called like Son of the Gunfighter or something in the 50s. So Russ Tamblyn and Amber Tamblyn are in the crowd scene somewhere in this film. And under credits, I think they're labeled like Son of the Gunfighter and Daughter of Son of the Gunfighter in the film. There are so many fucking cameos in this movie. What I didn't
Amazing.
touch on when we're at Big Daddy's is that Jonah Hill, I think originally was supposed to have a larger role in the film, but that got cut. So he left him in there.
Mhm.
And Kevin Costner, I think, was supposed to have been in that scene too, but had scheduling conflicts as he was recording that horrible movie Man of Steel, where
Oh,
John Kent dies in a tornado.
right. Wow.
Mm.
But it's cool that
And
clearly this is definitely a love letter to Westerns.
yes, that's why I like it so much. And you can probably hear me geeking out a little bit about it. Is that so? I'll go back because I forgot this too because I was so excited. The Marshal. I made a joke. Did you get the joke?
No, I didn't.
There's a pair of good old boys doing what they can. They drive around.
Hoop Dukes has a reference, but I didn't get why you were making that reference.
The Marshal is Tom Wopak, who was Bo Duke, I think. Because I think Luke had blonde hair. He was a dark-haired brother.
Okay. All right. He looks very different.
Well, come on. It's like 30, 40 years later. I look different than I used to like 10 years ago.
Fair.
I'm going to say Chris 10 years ago was a good-looking dude. Now I'm just like an old fuddy-duddy man that wants to shake my tiny fist at people that get on my lawn.
And make
in
podcasts.
Mississippi, Schultz uncovers the identity of Broomhilda's owner, a Calvin Candy, the charming but brutal owner of Candyland Plantation, where the enslaved are forced to fight in death matches called Mandingo fights. I hope you hear my finger quotes. That is one of the things that there was a movie from the 70s called like Mandingo that Quentin Tarantino lifted a lot of this from. There's a large dispute as to whether or not it is historically accurate. I don't think it is, but not to the extent that they're trying to make in this movie. Schultz, expecting Candy will sell Broomhilda if they won't sell Broomhilda if they ask him directly, plots to trick Calvin and say they want to buy a prize fighter and then purchase Broomhilda on the side for a reasonable sum. Schultz and Django meet Calvin at his gentleman's club in Greenville and submit their offer. His greed is tickled. He invites him back to Candyland. Even the ride there is a constant testing and pushing of Django. Then we hit the outskirts of it. And everyone staring at a black man on horseback before that atrocious motherfucking dog scene after the motherfucking atrocious Mandingo fighting scenes that are overly long and like basking in torture to black bodies. If you weren't sure that a black person didn't write or direct this, you would know right now.
Right. So first of all, Leonardo DiCaprio, amazing choice for Candy, right?
I think this was his first villainous role.
First film in this role? What do you mean?
I think this was the first role he played like a straight up villain, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. I was like, that's first film. No, yeah, it's his first villain role, right. And if you're shooting for that balance of Southern hospitality as a weapon to use against black people, he is a perfect choice for that because I've talked before about stunt casting, and he's a bit of that in the sense of people don't want to think of Leonardo DiCaprio saying and doing those things. So it's like your brain keeps kind of mildly rebelling against the things he's clearly doing, which is a great way of doing it. A bit like David Tennant playing the villain in Jessica Jones.
As the Purple Man.
Right, because your brain keeps going, no, it's David Tennant. That's the doctor. He wouldn't do that. Oh, but he's clearly doing that, right? And so it's kind of a similar intentional distance, which is perfect for Candy, I think.
And I can't speak to Leo, but for Tennant appears just to be generally also a good person on the whole.
Yeah.
Like the actor himself appears to be a good person.
Which is why these kinds of villains can be really powerful. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but uh, uh, Candy continually presents himself as if he were a reasonable man, but yet the things he's actually saying are completely horrifying. To jump to the dog scene real quick, um, he's very patiently trying to explain why his $500 needs to be. This is an investment. I need to recoup that investment in some way. Um, it's a perfectly logical, perfectly reasonable approach. But the whole time, like, this is a man's life we're talking about here, right? This is in no way reasonable or logical. But
Yeah.
you kind of, because it's Leonardo doing it, it's the it's you're not conflicted per se. That's not what I'm going for. Because at no point in time is his argument remotely sympathetic, but rather it's the you're lulled for a moment into it, and so it's a good way to if the whole point is to balance the violence with Southern hospitality. I could definitely see why that choice is made.
It is what racists and people that want you to not care about other human life do. They dehumanize people so that
Right.
then when they do something to them, it's not them killing a person, it's them getting rid of an object or a thing they own. It is the utter dehumanization that he views all of these people with, which
Right.
enables them to distract these horrible, atrocious atrocities. It's what governments do. It's potentially what presidents are doing. It is all over the place. And it's something that people easily fall into because it goes back to it's not me and my people, it's them and their people. And they don't understand that it doesn't stop there
Right.
until it's too late.
Sure. Because like the Mandingo fights are the logical conclusion of, well, it's just black on black violence, right? It's like, but literally you're profiting from it. It is an unsubtle allegory, but it works really well. And the thing that we kind of glossed over is while that's happening, separately, there is a black woman who's also very clearly possessed by him, dressed up in finery, dressed up very nice. And she's being displayed in exactly the same way as he displays the other fine objects he owns.
Mm-hmm. And that in of itself is reductive because a lot of times that white enslavers would not even treat the women that they physically assaulted in that manner. They would treat them worse than that.
Mhm.
Like there's so many layers, and this is part of the problems with the movie to make it try to be as action paced and pulpy as it is it strips away and undermines the actual horrors that are there. And to some extent, you need to do that. And to some extent, I was asking for something to be done like that, but at the same time, it works if you have the knowledge and historical context of what really happened. And a lot of
Right.
people don't have that.
Right.
So that's the conversation I'm trying to have with a lot of the work that I put out. Like these are things that you can do and engage with, interact with, but you also need to understand this is the actual history. And even more so now, it's more critically important because there are governmental bodies actively destroying and erasing that history and replacing it with a bunch of false narratives.
Right. Right. Um,
And this is the
kind
scene
of
where we
sim
get the other Django.
Yes, right, you mentioned that. Kind of similar building on that point, because this is the point where Django pretends to be a black slaver, and they think it's like, "Oh, this is the worst thing you could possibly be is a black slaver," which again opens up a more complicated black experience. It's like, "Oh, yeah, no, this is something that I'm guessing actually happened." I don't know if it really did happen or not.
Yeah,
You would know more than I would, um,
there were.
but when Django talks about people like him, he always uses the word black. Except when he's pretending to be the slaver, then he always uses the N-word. And something I noticed on the second watch is, like, he only uses that word when he's pretending to be this horrible character, which is a very subtle way of reinforcing this is still a slur. It was a slur then, it's a slur now, and Django understands and knows that.
And I understand there's some people that think if you can use it, you can reclaim it. I'm of the opinion that there are some words that aren't meant to be reclaimed. And I'm a writer, and that's my opinion about it. Is that word has too much connotation. Too many people have died and blood associated with that word to have it be something that can be reclaimed and put back into like common usage. I've had lengthy debates and discussions with even other people in the industry about it.
Sure. Like
I was at a
as
convention, slight deviation. I was at a convention and I first met someone, and we had a brief discussion about this, and then they used the word in a conversation with me, and I got up and I left because I explained my opinion, and then you decided that yours was more important than mine.
Right.
And I left, and I haven't talked to that person since.
Right. It reminds me a bit of the arguments in the LGBTQ community. Queer has been successfully reclaimed. The F word has not, because again, too much connotation around that specific word. So I agree with you. Like, there's a point where the word is too far gone. Um, uh, uh, bitch is a minor example, right? Yes, it means female dog. But one thing for my game in Pugmire, a couple people tried to float by well, it just means female dog. It's like, there is no way people reading this book are going to look at that and only think that. So
Yep.
we are not using that word in my dog game about dogs. It is too loaded of a word. And to my writer's credit, they're like, oh no, I see that totally fine. I mean, there was no argument about it. But that's something I had very clear thoughts about, because you're right. It's like, that is not a word that is going to be reclaimed. Now, feminists have tried to reclaim it in various levels of success. I'm not going to argue that point, but it can't be reclaimed by the dog community. Right? It's too far gone
Yeah.
from that community. So yeah, I agree with you that sometimes words are just too far out there, and this movie is making a very strong case for why it can't be. Weirdly enough, even though it's clearly
Yes.
just trying to do, this movie's proving no, this is why it can't.
And there are too many white people that just want to be able to say the word and run around and do it because it brings
Right.
them like a sense of joy, and they think that no one should call them out on it.
Yep.
Wow.
Is there anything else before we get to the dog season? I do want to talk about dog season real quick. I danced up to it.
Nah, we can go ahead and jump there.
Well, because specifically, like I said before, Candy makes an argument for purely a economical argument for why this guy should live or die, which is horrifying. He sets his dogs on him. We don't see what happens then. We're watching Django watch it. And there's a moment. So I was watching this with my wife, actually. Usually I watch this by myself, but hilariously, I was sitting down and I was in my head thinking I should probably watch Django Unchained some more time. And then my wife just turned it on. Just something to put on there. I was like, oh, well, I wanted to watch the movie anyway, so it works out great. So I watched it with my wife. And that scene comes on, and my wife says, Jamie Foxx is a fantastic actor, right? And it's like, we knew that, but like, and so we sat down and talked about that scene specifically. So it's a rare moment for me, because he puts his glasses back on, and how he fumbles that shows just how much emotion Django is having. He's furious, but it is not on his face. And all you see is his face. It is only through the way he is adjusting his glasses you can see how angry he is. And that is an amazing actor and an amazing director, to be fair.
Yeah.
That you can get a close up like that and see that much emotion on a perfectly still face.
And you also take into account that Calvin is literally leaning on his horse, staring at him as it's going on to look for some of his reactions.
Right. So it's amazing because, like, you're right. From the framing perspective, if we saw a reaction, it would break us out, because, like, well, why didn't Candy see that? He's right up in his face. But the audience needs to see that. And so that was the only way through to that scene. And it is so elegantly navigated, right? And again, like, to have someone else outside of me also say the same thing, going, that is some fantastic acting. Was really heartening. It's like, oh yeah, so it's not just me reading into it. You know, we're both in agreement. This is clearly something that Jamie Foxx is bringing to this moment. But again, like, the horror of it happening, because we don't see it, the horror is more magnified in our head, which is why, minor spoilers, when we do actually see it later in the movie, it becomes even more horrifying because we thought it was just
Yeah.
something that we were going to imagine, and then we actually see the act later, and it's like, oh damn it, I got sideswiped by this horrible thing again. And because we didn't see it the first time and we do the second time, it's even more horrifying. And it's like that was one of the points where I was like, okay, there is some genuinely good editing in this. I think there could have been more, but that was one where the editing was a good choice to make.
Awesome. We get Steven stamping checks as our first real shot of Candyland. Then the wide plantation. Candy lands and he instantly calls out Django. Messed myself up. I was so excited to get here. We get Steven signing checks as our first real shot of Candyland. Then as they ride up on it, Steven comes out and instantly starts like bowing and hate to use a phrase, but I'm going to use it for this character because he's a vile person chucking and jiving for Calvin.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And our intro to Hildy is her being punished for trying to run off. And if you look, you can see Django almost draws and kills everyone right then. After secretly briefing Brunhilde once they're inside with her, Schultz claims to be charmed by the German-speaking Brunhilde, and offers to buy her after arranging to buy an enslaved fighter. Sorry, I skipped ahead of myself. No, I didn't. I'm right. No, I didn't. I skipped ahead. Give me a minute.
Okay.
Too excited. I want to stop before he makes the offer to buy Black Hercules, essentially. So before dinner. I just want to go up to the point where they bring her in, they cleaned her up and everything else.
Right, you're right, because he doesn't offer to buy her quite yet, but he's offering to buy. He starts off by saying, "Hey, I want to give you an implausible amount of money to buy one of the things that I know you won't sell." That's where we're at. It sounds like
$12,000.
Right,
for your third best fighter.
Right, but really, a lot of what we're talking about here is the Stephen Calvin relationship, because it is clear immediately that we've seen Calvin just treat Black people literally like they were objects. And he is 100% not doing that to Stephen for some reason. Even though Stephen is being obsequious, as you said, shucking and jiving. Calvin clearly is putting up with his bullshit in a way that is surprising in the moment.
Yeah. Astonishing. But at the end of the day, then you also see that he can put his foot down and Stephen acquiesces to whatever it is he wants.
Right.
So an unusual relationship.
Yeah, and the first time I thought, okay, well, maybe it's kind of give more Samuel Jackson more screen time, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Watching again, because I know we'll get to it, the twist of how Stephen's relationship with Calvin actually is, you can see more of that here of like Stephen backing down on a second watch feels more like, okay, we're in front of people.
Yep.
So that's where I'll do this right now. But it's, again, Samuel Jackson is really good in the sense that it's funny how much he's pissed that Django's on a horse. But the undercurrent of what that really means is never lost.
And so this is another scene where they bring up that I hate. Django is like 1 in 10,000, which is so frustrating. And that's part of the problem with the movie is that it's trying to build Jamie Foxx's Django to be a Black folk hero, which is great. But at the same time, it's diminishing every other Black person except for like the evil Stephen. And then it doesn't touch on the fact that there were so many Black people that tried to resist that didn't get a chance to and were likely all killed. It's just this one person and everyone else is a passive servant in this process.
Right. I think I get the intent of if he's supposed to be a mythic hero, he needs to be one of a rare breed. But the fact that we'll get to it in a little minute here, but like it's tied so closely to specifically phrenology, which again, phrenology is an outdated racist science. So tying that to a bad outdated racist science would invalidate the argument, but the movie never really actually invalidates the argument, which is, I think, your problem. Is that the movie floats it out there and says, well, these horrible people believe it, but never actually refutes it.
Yeah.
And in fact, Django at one point in time accepts the mantle of being 1 in 10,000. So it's muddy enough that I could totally see why you're like, yeah, you're trying to say that that this racist science is bad, but you don't actually close that particular loop sufficiently well.
So it's and then we get another ultimate display of racism and how Calvin has dehumanized all these enslaved people is that when, and I'm calling him Schultz. You'll notice that I've called pretty much everyone by their first name except for Schultz.
Mm.
And that is specifically because I refuse to call him Dr. King. I know that's a Quentin Tarantino stinger, but I ain't doing it. So I'm calling him Schultz for the movie. Is that Schultz goes up to Calvin and says, "Hey, I'd like to spend time with your German-speaking enslaved person." And he goes, "Of course, I need to lay her out for you," and implies that there's going to be other stuff going on against her will. And that is his job as a Southern gentleman to do for other white Southern gentlemen.
I will say pulling her out of the box while she was nude, I thought that was gonna be more sexualized than it was. But it's not great because it's still lingering on her torment and pain way longer than it needed to. So it's kind of swapping one fetish for another, which is not great.
Which, funnily enough, I don't think I've heard anyone comment on that or go into that. But if you ever watch The Hateful Eight, people do comment about how, God, I forgot her name. The female actress in that was treated by the male character that Kurt Russell played.
Mm.
And so, Eddie, I want you to stop and think a minute. So you think when they pull the water out of the thing to wash her out, that maybe that's a nice thing? She's in a metal box that's been in the sun, and they dump a big bucket of water in that metal box and then pull her out. What do you think that does to the human body?
There's steam, right? Yeah. She's parboiled.
Yeah.
Or poached, maybe.
And like that brutality is just kind of overlooked if you don't think about it. If there's nothing else, I can go on. I could talk about the Southern incest that is likely going on between Calvin and his sister, his recently widowed sister, who he kisses on the mouth multiple times.
Yes, and constantly talks about how beautiful she is. Yeah, no, that was that. I noticed that.
Yeah. Anything else for this piece?
No, that's it.
Cool. During dinner, Stephen becomes suspicious, deducing that Django and Broomhilda know each other and that the sale of the fighter is just a misdirection. Stephen alerts Calvin privately about what he believes to be transpiring. Calvin Candy is humiliated by being fooled by a black man, but he contains his anger long enough to theatrically display his knowledge of a pseudoscience, phrenology, which he uses to justify white supremacy and black inferiority. Calvin's bodyguard suddenly bursts through, threatening to kill Broomhilda. He extorts Schultz for the complete bid amount before taunting Schultz, and breaks the truth. So many words on a page. Too excited. You know what? I'm not reading that, Eddie. So you're looking at it. I want to riff it. We get a dinner party where Stephen deduces that Brunhilde and Django know each other. He then tells Candy, who is upset that he was tricked by Django and a German dentist. He comes in, he does his whole shtick about phrenology, which, side note of interest, during this scene, that is really Leonardo DiCaprio's blood, and they kept filming.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And then during the process, he'd already told James Remar, his second appearance in the movie, to burst through. They threatened to kill Hildy, but instead, he just takes the $12,000 he was promised. Schultz, during that process, taunts Calvin again by telling him that Dumas is a black man because he sees his books all over the place.
Yep.
And Calvin gets the final taunt by saying, "Your deal doesn't mean anything unless you shake my hand." Schultz, unable to put his white pride aside, kills Calvin, and we get the most epic gunfight of the whole fucking film. It is a bloodbath everywhere. And then Steven gets Django to surrender by taking Brunhilde hostage.
Right. Huff. Yeah, this is the part where we realize there's a lot more going on with Steven, and specifically, how Steven acts in the library is completely different to how I've seen Steven previous to that. They are much more, and this is the part where I've been a little confused, but like the first time I thought they were equals. It's like, okay, they're somehow partners in this. Watching it again, I feel like Steven actually runs the place.
Steven runs everything. That's why they show him when the first image of Steven is writing and signing checks.
Right. Okay.
And
that's what I thought too.
That's even why through the course of the movie, Steven does specific things. It goes back even to the fact that Calvin, in the first week, even before Schultz meets him, is a Francophile. And then Schultz goes, that's great, and starts speaking French. And his lawyer stops him. He doesn't speak French. So Calvin wants the money and the lifestyle it affords him and doesn't care how he gets it. So he's essentially Steven's servant, but Steven can't be the person that's the face of everything because he's a black man in the South. So he acts like a servant in public while in private, knowing that all of his money is dependent on Steven, who is smarter than he is. Calvin acquiesces to whatever he wants.
Right.
Beautiful.
Which
and evil.
And again, the second time around is like, so we have Django pretending to be a black slaver, and then he finds an actual black slaver. And so I was like, that's really cool. And it was something that a second watch helped reward me. And say, okay, I see Steven is also a black slaver. And so the only thing that Django's pretending to be, which makes more sense as to why Steven pings what's going on a bit faster, because he this is literally what he's doing it, and the other guy's just simply pretending to do it. So it's a nice touch, and again, it shows that I think Samuel Jackson gets a bit of stick for always playing the same character in every movie, because this shows that like he can make subtle changes to how he pitches his lines, and it's a very different character interaction, because he goes, Steven in the dining room is different than Steven in the kitchen, who's different from Steven in that library with Candy. They're all the same character, but they all are giving very different power dynamics.
And a spoiler for something we're talking about in a minute is that even towards in the movie, we get the real Steven when we get a confrontation between the two, where he like throws off the fake walk and cane and everything else and stands up straight to move.
Right.
Like that is the actual character that is hidden through all of this. Samuel L. Jackson did not get nominated for this movie.
I'm shocked, genuinely.
And I know Jamie Foxx didn't get nominated for this movie. I know that Christoph Waltz got nominated in one. I think Leo did, but I got nominated, but I'm not sure off the top of my head, which goes back to the racism in Hollywood to show who got nominated for this film that's supposedly about a black person and a black story.
Sure. And I mean, again, like it's frustrating because I'm not going to say that those men didn't deserve it. But there are also other men in this movie who did also deserve it, right? and I think that's the frustration, because to your point, like about the shake my hand scene, right? It's been a nice, steady progression of King Schultz basically going from I don't care, I'm just business, to I'm emotionally wrapped up in your story, to now that I have you as a friend, I can't keep overlooking this shit anymore. Right? But you're right. And the thing is that it's not entirely altruistic, because if Schultz had followed his own fucking rules, you shake the man's hand and you get the fuck out with the money and the girl.
Yeah, because I want to point out again, they had a wad of cash. They took $12,000. That's most of the money that he and Django earned together. But they could have left with Brunhilde, with Django, and Schultz, all of them alive to have future adventures.
Yep.
Instead, he let his own pride, his inability to admit he was beaten, like,
Right.
which is a stark contrast to Django, who's had to live his life in that beaten mode in beginning to become someone else. Because even one of Jamie's flashbacks, one of Django's flashbacks in the film is when he and Brunhilde are caught for escaping, and he knows the white person wants him to be more subservient, and he doesn't even blink an eye to do this to try to save her. It's to
Right.
no avail, but he does it because that is able to put your pride aside for someone else. Schultz can't do that.
And looking ahead slightly, he will immediately do that again in about 15 minutes in the movie, right? So I like it because it shows that ultimately Django is the stronger character, because even though it looked like Schultz at the beginning was, he ultimately falls, and you could charitably say that he gets wrapped up in the operatic elements of it. Um, but another piece about that scene that has aged surprisingly well from 2012 to 2025 is, as a white man, I do understand the instinct to stick it to racists, right? So the whole Dumas scene of leading Calvin down that road of talking about how much he loves Dumas and say, "Oh, by the way, Dumas is black." You know, I understands the thrill on social media of trying to get racist into that kind of rhetorical trap. But the movie also proves how stupid and pointless that is,
Yep.
right? So that's the part that's aged really well, is it's so not enticing. It's like I can see how you want to feel that sudden thrill of haha, got you. But Candy doesn't fucking care. Candy's got $12,000.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't give a shit because racists don't give a shit.
Because you get that it bothers him, and that's why he then pushes him again. So it's a matter of escalation.
Well,
If
sure, but
if Schultz hadn't tried to get that last dig in at Calvin's expense, Calvin wouldn't have pushed to get the handshake at Schultz's expense. So it's a constant
right.
escalation of who has more power. And in that situation, Calvin had more power because he had a whole bunch of armed people and they have no weapons. And their objective is to save Brunhilde, not Schultz getting to say that I still fucked with you even though you screwed me over. Goes back to like Schultz says, Schultz says you're a bad winner, and Calvin says you're a bad loser.
Right. And so when I say I don't give a shit, that may have been the wrong phrase, because I mean, it clearly bothers him. You're correct, and thank you for pushing back on that. I meant more the fact that the win only satisfies Schultz's ego. It doesn't make the situation better.
Yeah.
Right. The racist not roll over and go, "Oh shit, I like a black author. I guess I have to reconsider everything." No, he just doubles down. Was more what I was saying, or what I meant to say, I should say. So you're right. It is purely white pride. It is purely Schultz going, "I can't let this. I need to get a dig in. I need this guy to understand that he's not okay." And all Calvin does is go, "I'm going to keep hitting you up on legal points," which is Schultz's weakness. And that's the other thing that's fascinating about this, is that he says, "In this county, if you do not shake my hand, this is not legally binding."
Yeah. Ugh.
So it is well written, extremely well acted. I can see why both these men were nominated, but you're right. It is also completely obfuscating the fact that there's a very similar dynamic and tension between Jamie Foxx and Samuel L. Jackson in this movie.
And you've heard me talk a lot about everyone else. I understand Kerry Washington was really popular at the time. I think out of the core, we'll say 5 people that are leading the movie, because she would be one of them, she would be the weakest part of that acting dynamic. And I'm not saying it's necessarily her. It could be because the part is underwritten for her character, but she doesn't. For me, she's the wrong actress for that underwritten role.
I could charitably argue that if Django Unchained is ultimately meant to be operatic, blending the spaghetti western with the Italian opera, if that is the intent of the structure, Brunhilde being the goal of the hero's quest, she is written correct for that structure. That is not a good reason, and Brunhilde is very clearly nothing more than an object to be obtained, even though
Yeah.
arguably Django, it was his wife, and therefore he's not trying to obtain her purely for average purposes, but rather to reclaim something that was part of his life. So it's not as bad as it could have been. But Broomhilda is purely an object. She has no actual motivation. She's simply a thing to be won. So yes, I completely agree. A lot of that probably is the part is just pretty badly underwritten.
Anything else before we move on?
No, let's move on.
The next morning, Stephen tells Django that he'll be sold to a mine where he will work for the rest of his life. En route to the mine, Django proves to his dim-witted Australian and Quentin Tarantino escorts that he's a bounty hunter by showing them a handbill from his first kill. He convinces them that there is a large bounty for outlaws who are hiding at Candyland and promises that they would receive most of the money. The escorts release him and give him a pistol, and then he kills him before stealing a horse and leaving for Candyland. And I'm pausing right there.
Right. This is one of the few moments where heavy use of the N-word made narrative sense.
Yes.
Was Steven specifically talking to Django about what he's going to do by selling him to the mine? Because if Steven reinforcing to Django constantly, repeatedly, you are property. That
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, that is the only part in the movie where it didn't feel excessive.
And I have to talk about it because they put them on the screen. Those are some big balls that we saw on the screen with our boy, our buddy, Walton motherfucking Ghoul
Yes.
as Moonlight. I'm going to call him Moonlight because I like to call him that. In the movie, wandering around. So it was nice to see Walton Goggins, who is becoming more and more prominent actor and is now like all over the place. So shocking. In 2012, this is where he was. I think he maybe even a little Justified right around now. So it was nice to see him. But that scene about trying to emasculate him goes back to another very strong historical beat. So like even that has historical overtones to it. And the Stephen piece touches briefly on the different, I don't want to call it, the different structure they have for enslaved people, from like house to field to other places. And it takes me back to at dinner table. One of the things I want to point out is when they're setting the table, they have nothing but black enslaved people, and they're doing everything in unison. If you watch them, they're like putting the cups out at the same time. I want you to think about how much they must have tortured them to be able to do that. And Stephen would have been the head of all that happening. So evil motherfucker.
And similarly, like, he tells Django, they're all back there deciding what they want to do with you, and then proceeds to tell Django what's going to happen to him. And then when one of the hands comes in to emasculate him, he's like, oh, no, the sisters decided this is what we're doing. No one tells me. It's like, no, because literally Stephen just decided that and is not going to convince the white people that it was their idea. You know?
Yeah. Oh,
evil. But again, like, it goes back to the point, like, you don't think of Samuel L. Jackson as an evil character. You don't think of Leonardo DiCaprio as evil characters. So it's now that you brought it up, it's even more frustrating because, like, there are parallels to the acting that both of those white actors were rewarded for are mirrored into the black leads of the movie, and yet they're completely looked over.
And before we move on to the next beat, the last one of the whole film, I want to point out that Django doesn't free the other enslaved people. He doesn't close the gate. He just asks him for the dynamite. Doesn't even give him instructions. But as he rides off, we get a pan of the guy who was eyeballing him earlier, gets a slight smile, which is trying to reinforce his Quentin Tarantino's folk hero ideal.
Right.
Which I think it should have had an extra beat where he does something to help them. Kind of how Schultz gave them like a pointer, like, we're in the middle of nowhere. You don't know where you're fucking going. I'm not going to give you a compass. I'm not going to wait for you. But if you follow that star, it will lead you to a town. There should have been a beat like that for Django to like reinforce that concept of a black folk hero.
Right. Leave them the money from the Australians or something, you know?
So, but that's it. That's what I think it's really missing. Because I love the iconic like blowing up Quentin Tarantino and he walks out of the smoke in the dynamite thing. Nice shot.
And that amazing Australian accent.
Oh, so much. All right. For QT, originally, I think there was supposed to have been someone else who was supposed to be in the role, and they couldn't do it until he stood in. I don't know why he didn't hire someone else, but he got in the movie because Hitchcock. Django returns to the plantation and kills more of Calvin's henchmen. He takes Broomhilda's freedom papers from Schultz's back pocket, along with his own forged papers. I want to take a beat there to say that Schultz didn't ever give Django his own freed papers. When Calvin's mourners return from his burial, Django kills the few remaining henchmen, and his sister Laura releases the two remaining enslaved workers, kneecap Stephen, and they get into this great debate between the two of them and Steve. And then Django ignites a dynamite that his planet and explodes the entire house. He and Brunhilde watch from a safe distance before riding off together. This is the second ending of the movie. The first ending was at the gunfight where Stephen convinces Django to surrender.
Say goodbye to Laura. So it's funny, as we've talked about it, you've actually turned me around on this movie being too long, right? Because even when I rewatched it, in my head, it was still Calvin versus Django was the actual fight. And so that narratively ends in that gunfight. You could have just changed it to where, as opposed to Stephen telling him to surrender, Django kills Stephen, takes Brunhilde, and they go. That was the end of the movie. So it's like, why do we have this stop and start? And now that I look at it, I realize the reason is twofold. One, Django needs to actually save Brunhilde himself with no other help. To be the true folk hero, he's got to do it completely on his own. So that's why he goes from nothing to go back and save her from literally being captured to that.
Yeah.
And the other is that I'm now of the opinion that the actual Stephen is actually the proper villain of the whole movie. Right? We don't see him for most of it. But Candy is just the mini boss before the main boss, to use video game terms.
Stephen is effectively Kingpin.
Right. So you have to go back, and you're right. You need that moment of Stephen shedding his cane, which is really a symbol for shedding civility, right? All the pretense of civility, I've thrown it away, literally. I'm just the bastard who's going to kill you. And Django immediately retorts by shooting his kneecaps out. And throwing all of his abuse to the face.
He didn't do that until he thought Django was out of bullets. He's like, that's 6 shots.
Yep.
Expletive. And then stands up, is like, let's do this. And then you get Django's 2 guns.
Right. It's funny because, like, to deal with it, I've been mentally replacing that word with motherfucker in my head. And so it's like 6 bullets, motherfucker, 2 guns, motherfucker. And it's like that works perfectly. It's the exact same energy, you know?
And if Quentin Tarantino had done that, the movie would be better, in my opinion, and it would strike harder whenever that racial slur was dropped. It would then amplify the power of it instead of diluting it throughout the movie. Maybe that was his hope, because it's not diluted enough. It's just frustrating.
Right. Because again, like the scene where if it had been diluted throughout the rest of the movie, the scene of Stephen talking to Django when he was captured, the N-word would have been harder there, because that was clearly the intent. But because it's so common, it's just kind of in the background of that speech. And so that speech gets a little bit weaker as a result, which is a shame, because it's a really good speech. It's proper villain speech, you know?
And if I remember right, so I think Jamie Foxx is from Texas, and that horse that he's riding on is his horse, and he could do all those tricks.
Oh.
He already knew all that.
Okay. Glad you brought that up, because that was one thing that I forgot to mention throughout all of this, is the gag of Schultz's horse bowing every time you introduce the horse. I'm like, that is some straight up Witcher Roach nonsense, and I love it. He's like, and this is my horse. I forgot the horse name. This is my horse, and the horse would bow every time, and I'm just like, oh my god, that's amazing.
Oh god. Oh my god. Thank you, Eddie. So I mentioned before that this is tangentially related to this, that I'm going to Gamehole Con this year as a like a special guest or bringing me out. I'm gonna start shifting even the Patreon stuff to give people insights into Gamehole Con. But now you've given me an idea for an off the cuff Haunted West scenario that I'm gonna run, but I have now some specific characters I'm gonna make for it based on a comment that you said during the course of this recording. So I'm gonna make it a pop-up game.
Which one it is.
Nope. I'm going to make it a pop-up game for anyone that may be at Gamehole Con. And if they're following me on social media, say, hey, I'm running the mysterious Haunted West game. 4 slots. It's a
That's it done.
Thank you, Eddie.
No problem. Are we at the wrap up? Because I have a
we are.
Post-movie
I just wanted to toss that bit in.
Well, because my thought is something that I pointed out to Chris before we recorded this. There is actually a sequel to this movie, and knowing the frame for that sequel helps me to understand some of the love that Chris is pointing out. Yep.
What? 1 second.
Okay.
So before you say what you're going to say, everyone is probably thinking they know what Eddie's talking about. There's 2 different routes you could go. Eddie's going to take the actual better route. I'm going to take you down the wrong one that you should not watch. There's a movie that Django shows up in called like it's that Seth MacFarlane movie about like something in the Old West.
Oh, that, yeah.
And there's a post-credit scene where Jamie Foxx shows up and does something.
Right.
As supposedly Django.
Okay, that is legally distinct Django, I'm guessing.
See, I knew you didn't know that one, so I wanted to like throw that out before you do the good.
I appreciate that, because I didn't know that. No, they're actually Quentin Tarantino actually wrote a comic series of Django meets Zorro. Django / Zorro is the title. Because Dynamite Comics had the rights to Zorro, but apparently DC actually did a Django comic adaptation through their adult imprint. So DC technically had the Django rights. So the comics got together to do a 7-issue sequel to this. And I only read the forward. I haven't read anything else yet. But I read the forward. Quentin Tarantino's talking about this, and he's like, "And just so you know, technically speaking, Zorro has also met the Lone Ranger, which means in Quentin Tarantino's mind, Django is in the same universe as both Zorro and the Lone Ranger, which tells you a lot of how he's envisioning Django as a character."
Yeah. I would love to see Bass Reeves, aka the Lone Ranger, Django, and Zorro team up together.
Right, yeah. 3 strong, solid, Western heroes of color. Actually, Zorro's Mexican, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Or is he Spanish? Okay, yeah.
You know what? I think he is Spanish, but this is a time when the Spanish would have still been strongly influenced in Mexico.
Okay. All right.
I think. I'm not positive, so I'm going to have to double check myself on that. So people
wait a minute, Zorro might be white actually. So.
he is not white. I know that for a fact.
Okay.
I just don't know if he is Spanish or Mexican. I want to say Spanish because I think there is something like Castilian is part of like the character's wealth factor, but it has been years since I've read Zorro.
Because Zorro's basically Western Batman, right? He's
what? He's dresses in black, wears a mask, and like doing justice sometimes with gadgetry. What do you mean,
A
Eddie?
rich guy who's respected in the country he's fighting crime in, who dresses up in a mask and uses a weapon to give his signature a device amongst villains he's trying to do, while also secretly has his identity to use his wealth to protect his vigilante stuff from. Okay, he's Scarlet Pimpernel, but still, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, Scarlet Pimpernel's also a Batman riff too, because Batman came before everything else.
Yes,
Then they
Pimpernel's
created
ripping off of Batman. Countess Orthez went forward in time, said, "Oh, that Gil Kane's onto something. Let me go back to where I came from and write novels based on that guy."
So I do like that idea though, because Lone Ranger, them. I'm trying to figure out who the female lead of that movie would be, historically speaking. Now that's a side project I'll put in my brain for later.
Anyway,
did you know that I think it was 2019, 2020, Quentin Tarantino had tapped Jared Carmichael to write a TV script for Django Slizaro? I don't think it went anywhere.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't think it went anywhere, but that would have been fantastic. Bringing back Jamie Foxx and Antonio Banderas.
Right now, see, make that as like a Apple TV show or whatever. You know, that'd be awesome.
So closing thoughts. We've gone on for a while about Django.
For me, Django falls in that category of problematic fave, right? It's the it's the movie that it's like, you know what? There's a whole bunch of qualifiers I have to give to explain, yes, this movie has problems. I recognize the problems. I understand the problems. But it's a good fucking movie, man. I like it. I watched it again. Like I said, my family threw it on just to have in the background, and we got into it. We were watching it. Usually, when we put stuff in the background, it's like we'll be on our laptops or whatever. That's a lot how we watch TV. But like halfway through the movie, we were all like staring at the movie and commenting on the movie. We all liked Django Unchained. It is a good movie, and it has problems, absolutely, but it's frustrating because like the problems don't detract from the greatness, which makes it all the more frustrating.
Yeah. And to a point you made early on, Quentin Tarantino used his clout to make a movie that primarily starred a black guy in a Western with his white friend. Is really how the movie, once you watch it, boils down to.
Yep.
And I'm not sure if anyone else could have done it, and I know they would not have done it, is the thing.
Right.
So regardless of my qualifiers I put on it, no one else did it at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love me some Spike Lee, but Spike Lee was not fucking making a Western movie with like a black folk hero going around shooting up white folks. Right. Mind you, if Spike Lee had done it, it would have probably also been awesome, but it wouldn't have gotten nearly as much attention, money, or anything else that Django Unchained did. Because that's how Hollywood and America works.
Right. But to your point way at the beginning of this episode, Django Unchained walked so sinners could run, right?
Yes.
And you could definitely see a line between, because that movie came out and was successful 10, 12 years later, okay, let's give a black filmmaker a chance to make a movie that has a lot of similar notes. It's a very different movie. Sinners and Django Unchained are very different films, but you can also look at them side by side and go, I can see some DNA in combination here.
And to clarify, I know that Eddie probably meant it is Django Unchained is a stepping stone that allowed Coogler and his own brilliance with the work that Coogler had done before that to build up the clout and ability to be able to say, this is a movie I wanted to make. So he could point back to say that someone else made a movie like that, not to detract from what Coogler had done himself, which is fucking phenomenal across the board.
Thank you. That was absolutely not my intent. My intent was much more him being able to say, I am also a respected filmmaker who also proven hits. Now I would like to make my own black Western, please.
I know. And I know that's what you meant. And I know that my patrons would know that. But in case we do a Western run, we might release this. And there aren't people that know what you meant. So I wanted to make sure that there was no ambiguity.
The only other thought I want to give, again, I watched this with my wife, who I'm not talking about this for the podcast. She is a physical anthropologist by training. She's not what she does for a job, but she got a master's in physical anthropology, which means studying bones.
That's awesome.
The outrage during the phrenology scene. Yeah. That is not how dimples in the brain work. That has nothing to do with how brain's organized. And like, honey, it's phrenology. We know it's outdated. She said, but it's still wrong. So.
Oh my God. All right. Let's wrap up this potentially long episode. I don't know, because I was so excited. We could try to make it as long as Django, but I don't think we have another hour to go. Eddie, if people want to support you for constantly doing this podcast with me for the sheer pay of $0 and minus hundreds of hours of your time, how could they do that?
Well, I mean, first of all, contributing to the Patreon certainly helps me indirectly because that makes Chris happy and he wants to keep hanging out with me and doing this stuff. So I get the satisfaction of Chris's bad jokes every time you contribute to Patreon, which is perhaps not the sell that it sounds like, but I'm still putting it out there.
I'm not spewing coffee from my nose. That was good though, but I'm not doing it.
If you want to support me financially, and if you like dog games, as I mentioned earlier, check out realmsofpugmire.com. From there, you can pick up the new edition of Realms of Pugmire, my fantasy game about dogs in the future who think they're in a fantasy world, but it's secretly science fiction, and it's cool, and it's fun, and I love it. How about you?
And you're all part of the Patreon, so you're supporting me. What I would ask is that over the next month or two, while I figure out some of the Patreon stuff, because I know that we've had to increase the Patreon because of stuff that Patreon did in the back end. And I'm going to make sure that it's worth the money that you're giving me to keep creating things. But I'm also shifting focus somewhat to focus on some of the Gamehole Con stuff. For instance, you're probably going to get pre-gens that I'm making for I have to make 24 pre-gens for 4 different games being run there, plus the secret game I'm working on that you'll get to see insights into. So it'll be a hard shift from some of the noir stuff I was going to do to secret thing I won't mention until you get the first drop of it. Otherwise, any reposts on social media, come in the Discord, talk to us. And on that note, catch you later. No telling